Animals were once able to speak to humans. Does that surprise you? You know, coincidentally, just as I started this video, I had to restart it because there was a sandhill crane outside of my home. I live in Florida. If you don't know what they are, Google it. They're a big bird like a crane, and they are the loudest bird, I think, on planet Earth. And he was throwing a hissy fit outside the window, and so I had to stop my recording because I didn't want his voice recorded on. It was so loud it would have bothered you. But they were communicating. There were two of them out there. And they were trying to get a message across to somebody that were upset, probably a cat. But they do communicate. They used to be able to talk. Obviously, they no longer can, but they were once able to. And I believe that they were able to converse and to communicate with people and hold a conversation. I can hear some of you now. Well, that's quite a statement. Do you have any proof to back that up? Well, sure. Well, let's start in the beginning, literally in the beginning, the book of Genesis. Now, we all know the story of the serpent and Eve and talking. Theologians across the denominational spectrum agree that the serpent was some kind of creature that walked on two legs. It wasn't the slithering snake until after the fall. Satan had indwelled this creature, and he spoke to Eve. But the account is really funny because Eve wasn't surprised. She didn't go, "Oh, the serpent talked to me." She thought it was natural. He was communicating with her. So it appears that the animals in the garden were able to speak. That's funny because how would you respond if a serpent came up to you in the garden and you were just gardening and a snake slithered up and said, "Hey, how you doing?" Now, I like snakes. I've caught over 1,000 of them in my life. I've kept them as pets. That's what boys do. But I think if one slithered up to me and spoke and said, "Hey, how you doing?" it'd give me the willies. But it appears that it was natural in the Garden of Eden for these animals to speak to people. Then in Numbers chapter 22, we see the donkey that Balaam used, the Balaam the prophet, and it spoke to him. He had been mistreating this poor creature, beating it. And the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and the donkey took that opportunity to express its concern about being mistreated by the prophet. Balaam was so shocked that he fell down on the ground, right? No, that's not what it says. It says that he didn't wince, he didn't gasp, he didn't fall down in shock. In fact, he answered the donkey. He spoke to it. He communicated with it. It seems early humans were accustomed to speaking with animals and animals speaking to them. In the book of the Revelation, chapter 4, we see the beast around the throne, animals. We see them fall down before God and worship him and saying, "Holy, holy, holy." They're able to communicate. In Revelation chapter 5, verse 13, we see that every animal that was on the earth, that's under the sea, every animal is in heaven, and they fall down and worship God, literally and verbally. During the millennium, animals are going to be returned to their original state of companionship with human beings. And I believe that will be the time that God restores their ability to speak. Now, even now we see evidence of animals being able to speak. We see parrots and other birds. They can vocalize human words. They can utter them. I was once taking a shower, not once, I take a shower every day, okay? But I was taking a shower in my home in Hawaii, and I was just scrubbing up, and all of a sudden I heard, "Good morning." I was shocked. Who was that? It came from up. I looked up thinking maybe there was a roofer on my roof or somebody cleaning a gutter and he was talking to me. I looked up and, in Hawaii, it never gets cold. So we don't have windows all around. So sometimes we just have screens so the air can blow through. It never gets cold enough that we have to turn on the heat and the heat would escape. And anyway, I looked up and there was this myna bird. And he looked at me, he turned his head, and he goes, "Good morning." And then he flew away. I found that to be quite unique, but it showed that animals have the ability to speak. I'm sure he learned that from somebody else. And one question that begs to be answered is, why did God stop this ability for them to speak? And that's a great question, one that I think we're going to have to speculate about more than find the answer to. In the meantime, let me look at this. In the Garden of Eden, it seemed like animals possessed the ability to speak, and it changed only after mankind sinned and fell from the grace of God. Now, according to the book of Jubilees, the mouths of animals were stopped and closed when man sinned so that God could show the distinction between man and animal. Man is made in God's image, animals are not. Now, I don't recognize the Book of Jubilees as canon. It's part of the apocryphal books that both Jewish and Christian scholars do not recognize as being inspired. There are 50 or 51 such books, the Jubilees, the First and Second Maccabees, Ecclesiastes, and so on. Some of them are good historical books that reflect what people actually thought about and wrote about back then, but they're not considered to be holy writ. And so I don't trust the Book of Jubilee for that. And was it correct in what it said? I don't know. How can we know? So we cannot be certain as to why God ended the ability of animals to speak. We can only know that he did. And we can cautiously assume by what we see in the book of the Revelation and what happens in heaven that he's going to restore that ability so that they can communicate again. In the meantime, while animals cannot speak, they can certainly communicate. They communicate with their own kind very easily. They bark, they grunt, they whistle, they click. They have supersonic sound that they send. An alligator in mating season will supersonically send out signals to females. And there's a host of other ways that they can communicate. Sea creatures like whales and dolphins, they communicate through supersonic sounds sometimes. Sounds that you and I can't hear. The human ear cannot detect them. So they're talking when we don't even know it. They can communicate within their respective species, and they can also communicate across species lines. They can also communicate with humans. Maybe not verbally, like, the parrots and other birds do, but they can get their message across to us. They can tell us when they're hungry, when they have to go outside, when they're thirsty, when they're afraid. We had a Chihuahua that we rescued from a breeder. They were going to put her down. And she was very abused. We brought her in and we took care of her. Now, she wouldn't come near me. I guess she was abused by a man. She trusted that I would not hurt her, but she just didn't want to come near me because she was afraid of men. But if there was ever a storm on the horizon and there was thunder associated with it, she was deathly afraid of thunder. She'd look to me and she'd come running up and jump in my lap. She would express her fear to me, and she knew that I was the one that would protect her. The bottom line is we have no trouble understanding and communicating with animals, and vice versa. They can communicate with us. If we scold the dog, it gets the message. I remember I was jogging once in Miami Lakes, and I was jogging down the street, and I saw these two Weimaraners on a porch on a yard across the street. And they came flying off the porch. They were going to protect their yard, as dogs are supposed to do. But I also noticed a car speeding down that road, and I knew that they were going to intersect and those dogs would be killed. And so I stopped and I yelled at them with all I could yell. I went, "Stop!" And they both came to a skidding stop, and that car went whizzing by. They understood what I wanted them to do. If you get too close to a buffalo, it has no trouble explaining your error to you. Same with a moose. If you get too close to one of those alpacas or llamas at the zoo, they'll spit in your face. They know how to communicate and tell you what they're feeling. The evidence is strong that animals once had the ability to speak, and it's also strong that that ability is going to be restored to them. Wouldn't it be nice that you get to heaven and your pet comes running up to you and explains to you all that they were thinking about before you got up there? What an amazing thing to know that God takes care of all of us, including his animals, and that we will be able to communicate in the future. I hope this is something that gives you cause to think and ponder. It's just great to know that we may be able to speak with our pets again one day. I hope you had a good time listening to this. I'll see you in my next video.